U.S. Army Rangers spearhead an amphibious landing on the island of Sicily. Their mission is to storm the heavily defended port of Gela under the cover of darkness. The beach is defended by artillery, machine guns, and mines. The Italian garrison is well dug in and prepared to defend their homeland to the last. Enemy planes and tanks are moving in. The mission is an important part of the Allied invasion of Southern Europe. For the Rangers, retreat is not an option. The men of the 1st and 4th Ranger Battalions board their landing craft in the Mediterranean Sea. These men are the point of the spear for Operation Husky, a mass assault on the southern Italian island of Sicily. This is where the Allied invasion of Europe begins. Over 5,000 ships and aircraft, and the combined might of the American 7th and British 8th armies, including tanks, artillery, and special forces, are heading towards Sicily. The invasion plan rests on landing more men on its first day than any other amphibious assault ever attempted. Rough seas and 40-mile-an-hour winds severely endanger the 48 invasion craft carrying the Rangers towards Gela. The Rangers are loaded up with as much equipment as they can carry into battle. Their standard gear includes the M1 helmet, haversack, ammunition belt, fragmentation grenades, the M1910 entrenching tool, and the trusty M1 Garand rifle.
As an infantry weapon, this was superb. It had amazing stopping power. It fired a .30-06 caliber round and delivered a really hefty punch.
The Rangers' landing craft begin their approach to Gela Beach under the cover of night. But they are unaware that enemy planes spotted the Allied convoy moving towards Sicily yesterday evening. And the defenders are waiting. As this elite unit ready themselves for a battle, they know they are about to carry out one of the most important actions of the U.S. Army in World War II.
Operation Husky, a joint American, British, Canadian, and French operation, was a crucial turning point of the war, marking the start of the Italian campaign. The Allies had successfully evicted the Germans and Italians from North Africa. That meant that they could now use those ports to start an invasion of the soft underbelly of Europe. Enemy air power based in Sicily dominated the Mediterranean and made it very difficult for Allied shipping to move without being constantly attacked. Strategically, Sicily was very important because it was both a natural bridge between North Africa and Europe and a barrier across the center of the Mediterranean. Its capture was assigned to a new elite unit of the U.S. Army. They were called Force X, a special grouping of Rangers and combat engineers.
Force X will be in the front wave of Operation Husky, the largest amphibious assault so far in World War II. The plan's success rests on landing more men on its first day than ever attempted before. The Allies expect the German and Italian ground forces and the Luftwaffe to defend Sicily at all costs. Despite the immense danger of this raid, there is no doubt of what is expected of the men by American Commander Lieutenant General George S. Patton.
In landing operations, retreat is impossible. To surrender is as ignoble as it is foolish. We must retain this tremendous advantage by always attacking, rapidly, ruthlessly, viciously, and without rest.
Aboard one of the leading landing craft is a former steelworker turned seasoned ranger, Platoon Sergeant James Altieri.
We were under no illusion that this would be an unopposed landing. We knew we were playing for keeps on this deal. It was a very unpleasant experience, and retching seasickness only made things uglier.
The Rangers know there is no way back. It is essential Operation Husky goes to plan. Force X must spearhead the landings by the 7th Army on the southern coast of Sicily. The 1st and 4th Ranger Battalions will hit Gela's beachfront, accompanied by combat engineers and 3 mortar companies. The 1st will attack to the west of the pier, while the 4th will take the east, and the combat engineers will advance through the center. They must storm the beach under heavy machine gun fire from enemy pillboxes. If they make it across the sand, they must assault the town of Gela itself. Once the beach is cleared, the 2nd wave of troops will follow and take out the gun batteries providing coastal defense. Then they must secure and hold the town, establishing defensive positions in Gela to fight off enemy reinforcements heading their way. Gela is a heavily defended stronghold. It's vital the Rangers capture the town and its coastal defenses, securing this section of coastline for the Allies as they push inland. Once relieved, the Rangers will then move forward with the Allied drive towards mainland Italy. Leading the Rangers into battle, 32-year-old commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel William Orlando Darby.
As we got closer, 6 searchlights on shore turned on us. And as one of the Rangers later said, the Jerrys on the flanks began to tune up, and the show was on.
Enemy mortars, coastal gun batteries, and 20mm guns fire down on them. The Rangers' covert operation just got noisy. They have been spotted and are now paying the price. Darby's boat retaliates by firing 6 rockets.
It looked as if nobody could possibly live through all the stuff the Italians were shooting out across the edge of the beach. I was aboard the rocket boat. I thought that it was a tremendous feeling. When the rockets went off, it seemed as if the boats had blown up.
Darby's vessel is carrying 12 launchers in 2 banks, firing electronically triggered shaped charge rockets.
The rockets hit an ammunition dump in the town, blowing everything sky high and knocking out the defenses on that side of the beach. An entire block and half of the buildings was leveled. It was a lucky hit.
The Rangers have been at sea for over 2 hours, but they are still 500 yards from the beach and under fire.
Each time we rode the crest of a swell, we caught glimpses of a frightful hell awaiting us on the beaches of Gela.
In an amphibious operation, the most dangerous and critical moment is when a landing craft's attempts come ashore. The whole of this mission is going to require coordination of ground troops, naval and air power. The first key objective for the Navy guns, take out those searchlights.
Despite fire from the cruiser Savannah targeting Gela's shoreline, enemy mortars and coastal gun batteries are still firing on the Allied assault crafts. Then the defenders blow up the center section of the concrete pier, knowing it could provide cover for the Rangers. Aboard landing craft 712 are Rangers from D Company, led by 23-year-old Second Lieutenant Walter Wojcik.
Wojcik was known for his quiet modesty, his exceptionally high intellect, and his poised dignity as a human being.
One of the men under Wojcik's command is First Sergeant Randall Harris from Iowa.
The landing craft next to us took a direct hit by an artillery shell, snapping a cable that held up the landing craft ramp, and they all went down with the boat. For many years, I suppressed this memory, thinking it was a dream.
Force X is 25 minutes behind schedule. To the relief of the Rangers heading into the firestorm, the destroyer Shoebrick succeeds in knocking out 2 searchlights. It gives them brief respite. Wojcik's D Company of the 4th Ranger Battalion is among the first to land on the beach. The destroyed pier should have been their cover, but now they will be exposed. Before the ramp hits the waterline, 2nd Lieutenant Wojcik leaps over it into 2 feet of water, urging his comrades to follow.
I had been loaded down with my regular gear, as well as 50 to 60 pounds of ammunition, but I stepped into a shell hole and I went down about 10 feet.
Close to drowning, Harris manages to climb out, but the danger is only just beginning as the company charges straight into a minefield.
Men were being hit all around me. Walter Wojcik was in front of me. He got hit in the chest and he turned around and he looked at me and said to me, "Harry, I've had it." A couple seconds later, I got hit. My stomach opened up. It felt like I got hit with a baseball bat. I didn't feel much pain of any kind.
4 riflemen following Wojcik are killed, and the lieutenant leading the 1st platoon is blinded by shrapnel. Operation Husky has barely begun, and already the Rangers are losing men and officers. And they have yet to make it across the beach. If they do, they expect a fierce fight awaiting them in the town. Force X is spearheading the Allied landings on the southern coast of Sicily.
Sicily is like a football on the boot of Italy. It's a staging post between North Africa and the Italian mainland. This is the first assault on mainland Europe since the German occupation of 1940.
D Company, one of the first to land on the beach at Gela, has taken many casualties. After the death of his commanding officer, and despite being badly wounded, First Sergeant Randall Harris takes command of D Company. He leads his men towards a row of enemy pillboxes that are spitting out deadly fire.
Howard Andre and I took turns cleaning out the pillboxes. We were a team through the war.
Between them, the pair take out 7 pillboxes.
Taking on pillboxes. This is a brave move. Ideally, you destroy enemy fighting positions with tanks and artillery. Where this isn't possible, hand grenades were the weapon of choice.
Clearing the pillboxes makes it easier for Force X's second wave in the assault. A and B companies of the 1st Battalion quickly make it across the beach. The mission for this unit is to capture a deadly coastal battery on the western edge of Gela. The joint commander of A and B companies is Captain James Lyle. They reach the main street and fall into formation. Single file on each side of the street, using buildings for cover where possible, each file covering the other. Even though it's dark, the Rangers skillfully clear the route.
Fighting in a built-up area, or fibula, is a dangerous procedure because the enemy could be anywhere. Progress can be slow as buildings have to be thoroughly cleared one by one before the troops can advance. Although urban fighting can seem chaotic, it's highly organised. It's essential that enemy strongholds and sniper positions are taken out if the Rangers are going to move towards their objectives.
As Lyle's column advances, they notice a roadblock extended across the Butera Road with 2 heavy machine guns and 1 47mm anti-tank gun. The Rangers can see there are 4 Italians guarding the roadblock and quickly move in for the kill. These instinctive actions are the result of rigorous training in close combat and night fighting.
In May of 1942, the U.S. War Department authorized the creation of the 1st U.S. Army Ranger Battalion. It was modeled on the widely admired British Commandos.
Captain William Orlando Darby, a 31-year-old graduate of West Point, was chosen as its commanding officer.
By summer of 1943, Colonel Darby and the Rangers had gained considerable renown because of their effectiveness in North Africa. After the victories in North Africa, Darby was asked to expand the Rangers from 1 battalion to 3 in preparation for a Ranger-led assault on Sicily.
I was given 6 weeks to find men and train them. I proceeded to select the men I needed, because I believe the best men don't always volunteer.
Among those veteran Rangers tasked with training new recruits is Platoon Sergeant James J. Altieri.
We old-timers poured it on relentlessly. We would go into battle with these men. Our own lives as well as theirs depended on how thoroughly we trained them, and we were determined to eliminate as many of the weak ones as we could. Under a blistering hot African sun, we gave these new Rangers the works. All that we had learned the hard way in Tunisia. They learned fast, and they picked up the Ranger spirit.
The 3 battalions rigorously trained together in realistic combat situations.
Together, they spent night after night making landings on the coast at a beach similar to that at Gela. Machine guns were fired out to sea over the head of the incoming troops, making it as realistic as possible. And the beaches were mined with TNT.
On completion of their training, Darby congratulated his new recruits.
We are going into action soon. I know you will measure up to what the Army expects of you.
Back in the narrow alleys of Gela, A and B companies from 1st Ranger Battalion, led by Lyle, have advanced through the streets and reached the western edge of town. In the distance is their objective, the gun battery trained on the Allied forces landing on the beach below. These guns must be taken out. In preparation for the assault, Lyle orders mortar fire. And begins to move his men forward for the attack. But there are barbed wire fences surrounding the gun position.
Once an advancing force has got to the wire, there are 2 ways of breaching it. The first is with wire cutters. This is slow, but it's covert. But if you want to make a fast, rapid assault, you've got to use one of these. The Bangalore torpedo.
Typically, these were steel tubes 4 to 6 feet long, 1.5 inches in diameter, filled with powerful plastic explosive. A number of tubes could be linked together for maximum impact. They are fired by an electric detonator pushed into the end of the pipe with some plastic explosive wrapped around it to trigger the main charge.
It was a cutting tool. It would destroy all the barbed wire in an instant, leaving a huge hole for the troops to go through. It wasn't very subtle, but it was effective.
This high-speed shot shows a Bangalore going off. The blast fragments the metal tube on detonation into thousands of tiny hot shards of steel that cut through the barbed wire. The Rangers must move fast now. The open terrain between the wire and the gun battery is too dangerous to cross. so one section moves along a ditch and assaults the gun emplacement from the rear instead. At 6:30 a.m., a report is made to Ranger HQ that the gun position, including 3 77mm field pieces, have been taken. These captured guns pack a larger punch than anything the Rangers have. So Lyle's men turn the guns inland towards the enemy. Lyle's men have reached their objective, but the rest of Force X still has to take on the enemy in the town and establish a defensive perimeter.
The capture of Gela and the destruction of shore fortifications around it, it's absolutely critical to the success of Operation Husky. The Americans had to consolidate the beachhead around Gela as swiftly as possible. Otherwise, a German counterattack could push them back into the sea.
By 8 a.m., the entire town is cleared of resistance. 200 Italians are taken prisoner. Platoon Sergeant Altieri and Lieutenant Branson, F Company 4th Battalion, are positioned on a roof, studying the Gela plain. What they see is not encouraging. 16 Renault tanks belonging to the Italian 16th Corps. They are heading south, straight towards Gela. The Rangers will be totally outgunned. The well-armored Renault R-35 is a French infantry support tank. Following the invasion of France in 1940, many had fallen into enemy hands. Although no match for the German panzers, they are a real threat to any troops lacking sufficient anti-tank firepower. Their 37mm short-barreled gun and 7.5mm machine gun can do some serious damage. Altieri and his men are face to face with the tanks.
They just kept rolling blithely along as if they were going to a Sunday church meeting. It was incredible. A whole army, supported by a mighty navy, had thundered ashore, and here before our eyes was 16 Renault tanks coming to pay their respects.
With no way out, the lightly armed Rangers need more firepower. They radio for anti-tank weapons. The 37mm anti-tank gun can pierce armor at 500 yards. But the Rangers discover that in the chaos of the beach landings, the anti-tank guns are missing. Without them, they're just not equipped for a tank battle.
We had all inserted armor-piercing clips in our weapons. Fat chance they had a penetrating, but it made us feel better.
The Rangers around Altieri are holding their nerve and counting on their training and discipline. They have no other choice. The enemy tanks are closing in fast. The Germans and Italians are fiercely defending against the Allied assault on Sicily. The US Rangers landed on the beach over 5 hours ago and have taken the town of Gela. But they now face an Italian tank regiment and are outgunned. Axis forces on the island number over 300,000, led by commander of the Italian 6th Army, General Alfredo Guzzoni.
Guzzoni's defense plan was to have units right up on the coast who would hold the Allied invasion for as long as possible, and long enough for the field divisions in reserve to come up in support. For Guzzoni, it's extremely important to stop the Americans from consolidating their beachhead.
The tanks are advancing towards the Rangers. And they're not alone. The Rangers face pockets of Italian infantry who could still tip the balance in the battle. But their weapons may not be up to the job.
The 9mm Beretta submachine gun is one of the most reliable Italian weapons of World War II. It has a rate of fire of 550 rounds per minute, but is limited to an effective range of 100 yards, less than a quarter of the distance of the Rangers' Garand. The American infantrymen absolutely loved this weapon. In fact, General Patton called this the greatest battle implement ever devised.
For now, Force X are more concerned by the advancing tanks. Sergeant Altieri is among the first to come under fire from the tanks. He realizes that to stop them, he will have to use unconventional tactics. From the rooftops, the Rangers drop satchel charges and improvised sticky bombs onto the tanks. The Rangers might be improvising with standard-issue socks and axle grease for their tank busters. But the British Army manufactured purpose-built sticky bombs in their millions for their troops. Explosives expert Charles Adcock explains how a British sticky bomb could put a tank out of action.
Well, this is the sticky bomb. So what you had was a glass ball containing a relatively soft explosive. Outer casing was a sticky mass, and the idea was that you would slam it onto the side of the tank, the glass ball would smash, giving you that big dollop of explosives that was in intimate contact with the armour. So now what you have is that detonation wave is transferred to the steel of the vehicle, causing the pieces of steel to fly off from the inside.
This demonstration shows what it can do to a 2-inch steel plate. When it detonates, it forces the steel to vibrate at very high speed, causing pieces of red-hot metal to splinter or spall from the inner surface. A deafening concussive sound wave and jets of hot metal fill the inside of the tank. The Rangers are under pressure, but the attack on Sicily cannot fail here.
A tank had just started to make the turn, its machine guns and cannons spitting out death and splattering concrete and plaster off the building we were in, when it was hit by a shower of grenades and rifle shots. These heroic efforts proved ineffective. The tank paused for a long moment before resuming its turn.
With Russia pushing the Germans back in the east, the attack here is a turning point in the war, and the Allies must seize this advantage.
Stalin had been very keen that the British and the Americans should open a new front against the Germans or the Italians in the West. The Germans were still perceived as being too strong in France, so this was the main opportunity.
Fortunately for the Rangers, the Italian infantry call off their attack before reaching the town. But the tanks haven't, and the Rangers are desperately in need of anti-tank weapons. Enemy planes are causing havoc, strafing and bombing with increasing fury. If the Rangers aren't able to halt the tanks, they will blast their way through to the beach and push the Allies back into the sea. The whole of Operation Husky is under threat. Force X is spearheading the Allied invasion of Sicily. They have successfully taken beach defenses and a battery and turned the guns back on the enemy in Gela town. But the lightly armed Rangers are now pinned down by Italian tanks. They are throwing everything at them, but it's still not enough. The assault on Gela, a key part of the Allied plan to retake southern Europe from the Nazis, is in jeopardy. Darby, in his Jeep by the square, decides to bring his .30 cal machine gun into the fight. But it is also useless against the tanks. He knows what Force X needs to stand a chance of halting their advance. A 37mm anti-tank gun. The lightweight M3 anti-tank gun is an excellent infantry support weapon. It wouldn't pack much of a punch against panzer tanks, but could easily take out lighter armored vehicles. Its armor-piercing shells have an effective range of 500 yards. Darby commandeers an M3 anti-tank gun and takes the weapon straight into the thick of it. Darby fires the first shell.
Even as the drama unfolded before my eyes, I couldn't believe it. It was one of the most outstanding and selfless acts of courage and daring. That was all the Rangers needed. The rest of the tanks did not pass. From alleyways and rooftops, Rangers, inspired by our valiant leader, waded in and made short work of the remaining tanks.
The tank following is struck by a double salvo of bazooka blasts. The bazooka first saw action in November 1942. It is essentially a steel tube, open at both ends, through which a rocket-propelled grenade is launched. It includes a wooden shoulder rest and 2 grips for aiming. The rocket is fired electronically and has a maximum firing range of 650 yards. Usually operated by a 2-man team, one aiming and the other loading, it is an extremely effective anti-tank weapon. To show what a bazooka can do, this modern equivalent is being remotely fired at a 2-inch steel plate, similar to the skin of a Renault tank. Unlike the sticky bombs, the rocket-propelled grenades pierce the armor. On impact, a shaped charge explodes and directs the blast through the steel plate, sending a jet of hot molten steel into the tank's interior and occupants. Aimed at the wheels, it can stop a tank in its tracks. The tank is finished off with a thermite grenade. Darby and his men hit the tanks with machine guns, thermite grenades, sticky bombs, and anti-tank rounds, forcing the remaining tanks to retreat under a torrent of harassing fire. Allied intelligence suggests there might be more armored units in the area, but for now, the Rangers have fought them off. But these tanks are just part of a 2-pronged counterattack. To the west, soldiers from the Livorno Division, regarded as the best Italian unit on Sicily, are advancing on the Allied positions. Fortunately for the Americans, the Livorno make a tactical mistake by crossing open ground in close order formation.
Close order formation goes back to ancient times. This is where infantry soldiers advance in a block, moving very closely together. With the arrival of big artillery, these formations effectively became easy targets. It quickly became obsolete. Despite this, the Italians seem to be using their forefathers' formation in their counterattack. It's complete madness.
The Americans at this point have a wide range of weapons that they're using against the Italians, including captured Italian coastal artillery, their own mortars, and the guns of the ships offshore. The Americans poured all of this different firepower onto the Italians, and as a result, not one Italian soldier made it into Gela.
By the end of the first day, the 7th Army had established a beachhead between 2 and 4 miles deep and 50 miles wide. In the process, it had captured over 4,000 prisoners. But it came at a cost. 58 killed, 199 wounded, and 700 missing. And the situation is still perilous, particularly in Gela. That evening, the area around the town becomes considerably quieter, but no ranger sleeps.
Every ranger was on his toes, weapons at the ready.
By morning, the men of Force X think the invasion is going well. But things are about to change for the worse. The Germans have joined the fight.
I had known the tanks were out there somewhere, so it was no surprise to see them. But what sent a sharp tremor through my whole body, a tremor composed of fear, awe, wonder, and utter astonishment, was to see a staggering 3-mile-long line of Tiger tanks suddenly appear out of the smoke banks. In clusters of 3s and 4s, they surged towards us. They were less than 3 miles away.
The new arrivals are an entire German division, armed with one of the most feared weapons of the Second World War. The 50-ton Tiger Mark I tank is a formidable machine with an outstanding design and thick armor. Over 1,300 were produced and deployed on all German fronts. It includes a version of the dreaded 88mm anti-tank gun and the MG-34 machine gun. Once in the Tiger's sights, unsupported infantry will be obliterated. If the tanks reach the town and the beachhead, the Rangers will be done for. Despite the heroic efforts of Darby and his men, it is beginning to look like they have taken on more than they can handle. The German tanks advance within 2 miles of the town. The Rangers now face the heaviest armor of the Nazi war machine. Force X is holding the town of Gela. After an amphibious landing made under fire and fierce street fighting, the Rangers now face an entire German panzer division. Outgunned and vulnerable, they have to face the reality that Operation Husky is now in jeopardy. But Lieutenant Colonel Darby is not going to give up yet. He brings into the fight whatever big guns he has left to him, including those of the US Navy. The cruisers and destroyers are carrying 25, 38, and 47 caliber guns. It's a long shot from several miles away, and they must fire over the heads of Darby's men with pinpoint accuracy in choppy seas. If the Navy's shells fall short, then Darby's men will be in the firing line. For half an hour, the guns of the cruisers Savannah and Boise and destroyers Glennon and Butler rage. But the advancing enemy tanks are supported with heavy air attacks. The fighting continues for 6 hours. Once again, the enemy is pushed back, but they aren't done. They retreat and regroup.
There were many local battles for towns and aerodromes around Gela. They were hard, bitter battles for us.
The Rangers know there is no going back until they finish the job or all is lost. After 50 sleepless hours of fighting, Force X has managed to hold Gela. But Operation Husky is far from over. Force X has no time to rest after their victory. They are immediately ordered to advance on the heavily fortified mountain peak of San Nicola, rising out of the plains of Gela. They must control this vital high ground overlooking the pass leading towards Butera and the Sicilian interior. If they fail, they risk counterattack by enemy forces. At nightfall, the 1st and 4th Battalion launch an attack, supported by armored infantry.
So the seizure of Gela was really only the first round. But the Rangers were not going to be allowed to rest on their laurels. They had to push on quickly, they had to keep up momentum and take St. Nicola. Enemy forces could not be given the opportunity to regroup or to counterattack.
As the Ranger force storm a nearby peak, the infantry attacking San Nicola are struggling.
The infantry troops, untrained in night fighting, lost their way in the advance. The streaks of gunfire and explosion of the enemy shells from the batteries just behind the Twin Peaks confused them. The dread of every commander had occurred. We were off balance, and we were unable to support one another.
Once again, the Rangers are pinned down by enemy fire. And once again, they are at risk of losing everything they have fought for. After delivering hours of relentless artillery fire on the Rangers, the enemy shifts their focus and concentrates on the 1st Division, farther to the right. Darby seizes the moment to regroup his force and orders an attack on San Nicola from the cruiser Savannah. It had worked before, but this time he fears he's asking too much.
My only experience in naval gunfire has been in the capture of the Gela fort, so I had a few misgivings about the use of naval artillery for support so far inland. The range was at least 7 miles. I wondered if the rolling ship's platform might not cause the shell to strike off target, endangering my men. But it was worth a try, so I called for fire.
The Savannah attacks the position. It hits the target and enemy batteries all around Darby's men with great precision. As the bombardment stops, Force X quickly advance, and soon San Nicola is in Allied hands.
In this difficult but successful raid, the Rangers succeeded in beating off a fierce counterattack and also opening Gela up to further American troops and supplies. The Rangers were in continuous combat for 15 days and succeeded in pushing the Germans northward. Sicily was the first Axis home territory captured by the Allies in World War II.
After the fight at Gela, General Patton awarded Darby the Distinguished Service Cross and offered a promotion.
I declined the offer of full colonelcy, however, and the command of an infantry combat team in the 45th Division. I was not yet ready to leave my Rangers.
Sadly, Lieutenant Colonel Darby was killed in action on the 30th of April, 1945, while fighting in northern Italy. For all he achieved, especially in Operation Husky, he was posthumously promoted to Brigadier General.
With the capture of Sicily, an attack on the Italian mainland across the Straits of Messina would become possible. And Allied forces could then begin to fight their way up through Italy towards the heartland of the Third Reich.
Just as important, Operation Husky was also the precursor to the D-Day landings in 1944. Darby's Rangers began the charge that retook Europe from the Third Reich and ultimately resulted in the Allied victory in World War II.